let me show you something.
Welcome, everybody. Great to have you all here. Yeah, we'll have a little chat about some of the SEO topics that are relevant for agencies and growing your clients and growing your own agency website. But I guess quickly, first off, the reason FluidSEO is around and a little bit of background on FluidSEO is just because technical SEO and on-page SEO is something that everybody has to do if you're trying to build a website and grow it through organic or SEO. The technical stuff is basically the foundation that all of your other SEO work is built off. And so we can talk more about the details, but the whole point of FluidSEO is to help with the stuff that's a little bit boring and time consuming, but it's just a necessity when it comes to SEO. So we can talk more about it, but Hans, do you want to give us a quick intro to Adaptify?
We are basically a step after. So, you got a great site built with Webflow, and what do you do after? So you're going to have to get some content, and first thing is deciding what kind of content you want, and then the second thing is once that content is on Google and it's indexed, in 2024 you still need links. So you still need people to basically talk about your website and have a reputation. So that's the second thing we do. We kind of automated getting organic links, and also automated kind of like keyword, like finding keywords, and then also creating that content. First thing I want to ask you, Tom, is has anything like changed recently? Like, is there some like common advice you give almost straight away to someone? What are some common like pitfalls that people have?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, when you ask if it's changed, stuff is definitely changing. Stuff is changing all the time, but still the most common pitfalls are the basics. It's like doing all of the standard stuff that you need to do so that Google or any kind of crawler knows what's on your website. So things like metadata, things like using keywords across your site, both in the title description and also in the content of each page, alt text for images, all those kinds of things that have been talked about for 10 years. When people ask what's the first thing I should be doing with SEO, that's still always the answer. And then I think the stuff that's changing is more around how Google is thinking about the knowledge panel and adding things like local business schema to your site, or adding product schema or review schema, things like that. That's nothing new, but it's definitely becoming more and more common for people that are trying to rank, especially if you're in like a local services business. Having a local business schema on your site is super valuable, so you can show up on the map, Google Maps, things like that. So yeah, it's a combination of things that haven't changed and just need to happen and just need to get done that people still struggle with because they're boring or they take a long time, or maybe they don't even know that you need to do these things. And then keeping up to date with what's going on with Google and Knowledge Graph. And then I think the really interesting stuff is going to be in the next couple of years, what happens as companies like Perplexity or other search modalities come about. And obviously we don't have the answer today to what that means, but I think that's where the really interesting stuff is going to be in the next couple of years. But yeah, you're with Adaptify, you're more focused on the content side of things. Can you give us a quick overview? What is the whole idea around content with SEO? What's the point of content when it comes to SEO and Google?
That's actually a really good question, because you kind of have two things, which is you have things like landing pages and services pages, and Webflow is quite cool because you've got often these gorgeous templates and a lot of freedom to build these great sites. And then you have the blog, but the thing that just is true is, especially in 2024, like when most of the search traffic is kind of long tail traffic. If your customer does landscaping services, maybe people are looking for inspiration using, local plants or something. Or if it's an air conditioning repair company, you've got like a segment of customers looking for an air conditioning repair company, but often also leaking air conditioning, dripping air conditioning, how to replace the remote of the battery. And then like, if you become that local person, or like just that person that has that answer on the website, you start to get traffic from people that are actually asking, like, that they actually have questions that you can answer, and you can kind of build that credibility, because a lot of purchase decisions aren't made in like one go. So they might have
Yeah.
seen a blog from you and then they click through a little bit, or they see you again the next time, stuff like this. It really adds to that like kind of long tail. Yeah, some people will purchase straight away, but then you have everyone else that is not ready to purchase.
Yeah.
And that's what content does. And you see it on most sites. It's like, non-branded content, almost nothing lands on a landing page. Like,
Mm.
your homepage doesn't get as much SEO traffic if you don't have a lot of branded traffic. It's really Google likes blog pages. I think a great
Yeah.
example is, recipes.
Yeah.
It's a stereotype, right? Like you got the life story and then you got little video and blah, blah. That stuff just works. Like try publishing a recipe without, and we don't do recipes. I mean,
Right.
that's not really a specialism, but like it's a really visible example of like Google hasn't changed with that.
Mm.
They want more context. They want to have the best recipe, not a really short recipe. That's it. Like, so
Yeah.
yeah, content is still really important in 2024, maybe even more so than it was before, because content is so easy to create. So high quality content.
Do you know, I remember hearing it ages ago, but I can't remember off the top of my head the statistic on long tail versus not searches. Like, what's the volume of traffic for long tail versus not? Do you know that by any chance?
Yeah, we have kind of like, this is slightly finger in the air, like, because I remember looking at this for, across a wide range of sites, but not necessarily like, we're talking about if SEO becomes like one of your traffic drivers for your customers' websites, something like 80% is quite common. Like it can be quite high.
Mm.
Because branded is only existing customers or people that already know about you, and non-branded is everyone else. So very quickly that becomes more. The other thing that's very important is purchase intent. So
Mm.
a long tail keyword, for example, e-commerce. If someone types in e-commerce, it could literally be a student learning about business. How to fix my Shopify website. That's probably someone who has a real problem. So that it's already a little bit more likely that you can help this customer and maybe establish some kind of relationship with them very early on.
I guess that means if 80% of traffic is coming from long tail keyword searches, that means that if you didn't have content for those searches, then you would have 80% less traffic. So it's a big opportunity.
Yeah, it's huge. The cool thing though is in 2024 is it's both, as in you can't we actually check if our customer sites have a services page. Ideally, the author is displayed on the website, but then also there might be an author page. There's social outbound links, so the site exists across other platforms. Things like this. There's evidence of like customer testimonials. So these kind of things. So these are, you can also have them in your rich data as well, which is part of the technical SEO. But it's also like Google kind of knows if a website is good or not. Same with layout. You can have an ugly website and a pretty website. And like Google says they don't, but we have enough data now, including the API leak, that they do. They know if a user in a Chrome browser is spending a lot more time on a page. I think you have a little bit more about to say that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not sure if the audience are aware, but earlier this year, there was a leak from Google's internal documents that for the first time, I think ever, some of their internal documentation around their search APIs got leaked. And so for years and years, Google was denying that they did certain things in terms of how they rank sites, like specifically looking at how users behave on the site and like keeping track of what people click on and things like that. They, for a long time, denied these specific actions. And then these results came, all these API docs came out, and people dived into them, and thousands of pages, and they realized that actually Google does keep track of these metrics. Hard to know if they do use them or how well they use and how important they are in the rankings. But it was the first point where everyone could finally say, okay, we can't believe 100% of what Google tells us when they tell us what to do when it comes to SEO. Super interesting. And I think all of that, the things like you said, like having testimonials or reviews, all that kind of stuff on the site, Google can infer, or breadcrumbs, for example, being able to navigate your site and making it clear both to Google, but also to your users how to navigate your site. All those things Google can infer, and it just makes things a bit easier if you tell Google specifically, tell Google explicitly how to structure or how your site is structured and what they're looking at when they're crawling your site. The other part of that you mentioned briefly was people spending time on a website. So the signals Google uses are all of the things that it can scrape from your site, but also how people interact with your website. And so, for example, if people bounce, this is one of the oldest metrics they've used. People bounce from your website, they don't spend long on your pages. Google knows that your content was not the right content for that search query. So it's not just all of the details of embedding stuff on the site and having all of the technical set up well. It's also about having a good user experience. And I think the two come together in places like alt text for images, where that's really important for accessibility, and that's an area where Google is pretty clear what they want to see on websites. I think the way I think about it is you don't have to be doing super wild technical stuff to get your SEO to work. But if you're not doing the basics, your SEO is not going to work. That's how I think about it.
I fully agree with you. It's really just, it's a checklist. Once the checklist is there, and some common sense.
Yeah.
Although common sense is not common sense to everyone. So one thing I find, for example, site speed. I don't like using slow sites, but we have seen where we saw nearly identical sites on our platform, and one ranks well and the other one doesn't, and you go, what's the matter? And we found we have kind of a formula for this: is if your site is slow, Google doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Definitely.
one technical thing, which is just get that site fast, especially the blog page, because that's the actual page that Google will present. But even landing pages, I think if the site is slow a little bit, then things are just not going to rank.
You might have to do things differently on mobile versus on desktop as well to make that happen. Like, for example, not having animations on mobile so that it loads faster.
Actually, one thing that is quite important to note, in early July, Google switched almost completely to mobile indexing. And the way I kind of summarize this to our customers was just focus on the mobile experience for Google, for like content, because content is what goes on. That's the more competitive stuff. Just look at like how fast you set a mobile, how does the blog post look on mobile. Things like visible CTAs is quite good. So you have the blog post and it's quite long. Typically a well-ranking blog post is long. Is it easy for a customer to then maybe navigate somewhere else on the site? Stuff like that is more important now than it was maybe 2-3 years ago. So do you want to maybe dig in a little bit, show what SEO is about? I'm quite excited.
Let's do it. So I'm sure you've all seen this screen before, or the Webflow interface before. This is Fluid SEO in the front here. Super cool having apps in the Webflow designer nowadays. Don't need to use janky Chrome extensions to try and make things work. Get a lot more access to what you can do under the hood with Webflow. So really happy to have Fluid SEO in the marketplace. I'll dive into a couple of the features. I won't go through the whole product, so feel free to check it out yourself. But I mentioned a few things like titles and descriptions on pages and alt text. So alt text for images. I'll start with alt text for images. We were saying before, a lot of people tend to kind of forget, or it's just too time consuming to do some of these small detailed tasks. So in Webflow, for example, if you wanted to add alt text images, maybe folks in the audience already know this, but you have to kind of go through and click on each one and then type something into the box and then go to the next one. So it's a time consuming, slow process. Fluid SEO, the whole point is make these things easy. So give you one pane where you can see all the images on the site, and then you can just quickly select a bunch of them, hit the generate button, and it goes away, talks to the internet, and like Hans was saying, use some AI to work out what's in the images. And if you like what comes back, you can just save it and save them all together. There's one button up here that'll save them, or you can edit. Let's say this is in Sweden, for example, this flock of seagulls, and then you can save them all at once. So huge time saver. Filter by images that don't have alt text, so you can narrow it down and just find all the ones that don't have alt text. So this has been a big fan favorite. One thing that Fluid SEO does that I haven't seen anyone else do is work in the CMS. So not only images on your static pages, but if you have images in your CMS, they also need alt text, and FluidSEO can help with that too. I won't demo that just because it looks pretty much the same thing. Titles and descriptions, again, if you, as Webflow folks, you all know this, but if you want to edit the titles and descriptions for your pages, it's a bit of a pain going in and typing in those boxes, clicking on all these really small icons, saving them all. Again, having one place to do that, so one pane that has all your pages in it, and rather than having to type stuff, again, a little button goes off, talks to the internet, comes up with a suggestion for you. This will go and read the text that's on the page and use that to come up with a suggestion for a title and description, taking into account how long it should be. If you make it too long, let's see how long it needs to be. It'll tell you, oh, that's too long. So took into account how long it should be. You can add keywords. So if you have keywords for your pages, it will use those keywords in the title and description as well. The one last thing I'm going to demo today, and then everybody else can jump in and check it out for themselves. But the one last thing, this is something we launched this week. So very excited about site audit. One of the best things you can do before launching in terms of SEO is doing a little audit just to catch all the issues that might be on the page that Google's not going to like. So FluidSEO can do that for both CMS pages and also static pages. It goes through and checks a bunch of stuff like, for example, we didn't save the title for this page, and so there's no title there. Things like the headings, have you got duplicate H1s for the images? Again, telling you that there is some alt text missing. Have you got broken links? So there's a whole bunch of checks in here. The thing that we're trying to do with FluidSEO is make it so that not only do you do an audit, it tells you what's wrong, but it gives you a button to fix it. So if you were to use SEMrush or Ahrefs, for example, it'd tell you that there's no title on this page, and then you would have to go and find the page and type in a title. So that's the whole goal with FluidSEO, is to make it so you can both find out what the problems are and then fix them. Yeah, I'll leave it there unless, Hans, there was something else you thought I should demo here. I figure something nice and quick to show people the power of FluidSEO, but this is what we're trying to do to make technical SEO easy and simple in Webflow. So once you've got technical SEO set up on all your site, on all your pages, then what's the next step?
I can answer this by sharing my screen. So indeed, you got a beautiful website, you got all your services pages up, and then to get to that 80% to get that based anything non-branded really, you're going to need to start ranking on the keywords that your customers care about. So we are a fairly straightforward platform. We do articles. The main thing we do is articles and content. So what we do is you upload every single customer site individually. That means that every single customer you can kind of have different settings for, configure in different ways. We support Webflow. We also support other platforms, and every site is its own little project effectively. And the way it looks when you click on a site, for example, another agency, is something like this. So there's a little checklist. You can see the performance. You can see the backlink pitching effort, like the amount of pitches that are sent and what's in progress. And you can also see the content calendar, which is content that we're planning to publish for you. Now, I want to dig in a little bit deeper in some of these things. One of them is the one-click publishing. One reason why we love Webflow is behind the scenes, Webflow is technically quite strong. So their CMS, I know it can be a little bit unintuitive to set up from Webflow side, but once you have that up and running, it's very robust. And we have a plugin in the Webflow store that connects and also automatically, without any effort, automatically pushes the blog post that we create with all the metadata and everything straight away synced to your site. And because it's so deeply integrated, it's virtually error-free, which is quite nice. Second thing I want to show you is the content plan. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into this. So how does this work? And why would you do something like this? Thing that we found out is if you want to rank for anything on Google, you kind of have to do a similar process. You see all the good SEO agencies have this process, and all the large companies have this process too. First thing is basically keyword research. So we have an interface, which is the keyword cluster interface, where we find keyword clusters for you. We know that you know your customer sites better, so it is fairly easy to just add a new cluster and add your own keywords, import your own keywords. But by default, we're just going to give you a list as good as possible. We use SEMrush data for this. We also use a few other data sources to really make sure that the data is as good as possible. And the way it works is we kind of start with groups. So you've got these clusters, which are kind of almost like mini goals. Typically, they're linked to like a services page or your home or your customers' home pages. And we try to find really good articles. Now, once you have this, we're going to cycle through these and publish articles at certain times. We are kind of these frequencies, so it's manual. You can go and maybe blast out a few, especially with a new website. You want to launch it maybe with some content, or if it's running daily, where every workday we do the research, we create a plan, and we publish this article. This is really good because SEO is a long-term game. It's not a one-off thing. It's this constant, repetitive. Like you have to keep going at it for a while, and that's really where we see the results. And that's why AI is quite good, because you have to be a little bit creative. You have to write good content. You have to find good keywords. That is thinking time that you have to hire people for. AI does this really well. It's kind of forced creativity. That's what we really like about using this platform. Why we built this platform. So say, for example, on July 26th, we want to create this article. We have this keyword. We have a few added keywords that are very similar, but we also want to rank for. What we do is we actually follow a very similar process that you would do before AI, which is first, let's go do some research. Let's look on social media, or let's read some documentation. Let's read what is ranking high on Google. Let's find some similar keywords. So, we kind of go through 10-ish sources, and then we start drafting an outline. The other thing that we also start to take a look at, like, what is the search intent? What kind of format of article are we going to use? Double checking, are we linking competitors to competitors or not? Most customers don't want competitors mentioned, but in some markets it's actually really good. And then we'll write the best title, better than anything else, and we create an outline that is more in depth than any other article that is ranking on Google for this keyword. Creating an article takes a few minutes, happens behind the scenes, can also be fully automated. So every morning there's an article ready for you. A created article could look something like this. We add images, we add infographics. We all find these for you. You can also upload your own, like a little library of your own images. And we basically start writing a really well-researched article with inbound and outbound links. And what you'll see is this doesn't read like ChatGPT content. We're really obsessed with making our article writer actually pleasant to read. It's well-researched stuff. It's been through a bunch of steps, and this stuff's actually used as useful as we can make it. And you might go, but well, it's now published to my site fully automatically behind the scenes. I haven't seen it. I haven't reviewed it. Well, you can totally. We know, like, if you hire a writer, for example, to write an article for you, you want to review them. We actually realized if you can have AI check AI, the accuracy increases a lot. So we run, depending on the article, between 15 and 20 checks. Stuff like, does it mention competitors, or does it have the correct subheadings? And if it fails, we'll just ask it to regenerate that section again. Having two different language models check each other increases accuracy a lot. And I think this is quite fun because it's AI checking AI, which I think is is the future. But where maybe we had an error rate of like a few percent before, this like 100x the error rate down. But the philosophy that we have when using AI is maybe a little bit similar to like the self-driving car thing. It's like it will fail sometimes, and sometimes it just it's a keyword that is just, it doesn't perform, like it just doesn't create a good article, or your customer is a lawyer or something like this, where the checks are a little bit more stringent. Then we then we have an actual editor review it. So we have a small editing team, and they check every day the articles that failed. It does delay the article with a few hours, but it allows us to create content that is as high quality as it gets, really. Typically, this beats humans because it's more reliable. It makes actually less mistakes, and the quality of the article is very high, and it ranks really well. You can see here these are genuine numbers. You can kind of see that SEO is always a little bit difficult. But we see almost all websites. You see this kind of trend of like impressions going up quite significantly. So that is really the content piece. The other thing that I think is quite interesting to take a look at is, so how does PR backlink building work? Well, you might, if you're an agency owner, you might know you can purchase links. That's okay. They sometimes work, but the problem is Google in 2024 started indexing a lot more stringently. So any article that just doesn't really answer anyone's questions, Google stops indexing it, and then it's not a backlink. If Google doesn't know about it, then it doesn't work. So we just pitch to journalists and writers on your behalf, because you've got a copy of your website, we know what you want to rank for, and we also ask you to set up a little backlink profile with maybe a mini interview with your customer and a few more details. This is not required, but it is very helpful. And then we just start reaching out to the journalists, and we'll send them a little pitch. There's journalists share a lot on the internet. There's a bunch of platforms that we use, like Haro and a few others. And you have larger companies have humans do this, and they might send out one pitch or like 10 pitches per month, and maybe one gets placed. We send out 100 pitches per month, and to be honest, our placement rate is not a lot lower. So we'll probably place 3 or 4 links. This works quite well. And also, some of these quotes are actually quite good, because you might actually have some unique insight shared on your website. It's quite common that in these backlink profiles, I generally see people that like something like, you manufacture rugs or something. This is something that not a lot of rug manufacturers are talking on the internet to journalists. So you get mentioned a lot, and you get a lot of really good backlinks. You're talking about like tier 1 kind of backlinks. This is an example, like generally like entrepreneur.com. We have agency owners often they get mentioned by stuff like this, Forbes, Yahoo, stuff like this. Quite often, few of these links, and SEO suddenly becomes really easy, which I really like. So that's just a quick overview of our platform. So yeah, that's kind of the context, and that's really like Adaptify in a nutshell.
Yeah, super cool. Thanks for sharing. I think I was thinking earlier today, like the two ends of this SEO game of like getting the fundamentals right and then continuing to make content. That's really, and like getting the backlink, like this whole getting backlinks thing. If you can get both of those right, then you see amazing results like you showed here. Like
Yep.
that's basically all there is to it when it comes to SEO, unless you want to get wacky and start doing some black hat stuff or like trying to be outgame the algorithm. But I wouldn't really recommend that as an SEO practice,
No, like I bring like basically doing anything that is not in line with what Google thinks is you're on borrowed time.
Yeah.
So having a journalist mention your customers, that's great, because that is genuinely content. And but if you get some kind of, you purchase a link and Google knows that this site is now used heavily by purchase links, then it might not get indexed anymore, and then you're back at square zero. Like you typically don't like lose your site doesn't get banned, and that doesn't really happen as much, but it just to have no results, and no results mean customers don't pay you. So yeah, same with just creating lots of content in ChatGPT. It's used a lot now. Low quality content does not rank in 24. It just doesn't. So yeah, you need to create higher quality content, and the content that we try to write, yes, if you create 10 articles, 1 or 2 are maybe a bit meh, but is it one or two of these are really good. What I mean with meh is that just maybe not super interesting to read, but they're still maybe the subject is also not super interesting. That can also happen, but occasionally we get a bit good.
And to compare that against human writers, it's going to be the same or maybe even worse. Like
that's our benchmark. Our benchmark is not necessarily like every single keyword you can write a banger for. It's much more like, do you know if your customer is going to rank for this keyword? Know that, and you know how much traffic you're getting. That's already amazing data. There are some keywords, but then you might want to add a few more edits and maybe put maybe like a custom component in it. Especially if it gets quite a lot of traffic, you might actually want to make sure that the CTA is very clear. But any article that doesn't rank, not everything ranks. It's a bit random. Most experts will tell you that. You got your you got that data, which I think is really good.
So yeah, definitely. Should I let my help articles be crawled? I think it depends a little bit on what the content of those help articles is. If it's very specific, like press the purple button after pressing the green button, that might not be super helpful. But if it's more general around, yeah, help articles around how to fix your air conditioner, totally, that stuff is valuable to have indexed by Google because it builds authority on the topic for you and your site. And the schema question, definitely. So if you, for example, had a good answer to how do I fix my air conditioner, and you put the FAQ schema on that page, then Google can really easily interpret that and show that answer up at the top in one of those little drop-down boxes or in like a little search snippet, helping people to answer that question very easily. And then Google will usually link to where they get that data from, so they can go and find your site. Did you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, also, these Q&A things actually often come from long form content. So, and also they're quite quick. We've seen articles rank in minutes there. So it's kind of Google. It's almost like an alternative search results page. So it's kind of like you have two shots. You have your URL below, or you can get mentioned in the Q&A. Q&A might not click through as much because the answer is presented there. But especially if it's in a context like you write, like how to fix my air conditioner or like surplus side, these are really great to be featured in the Q&A for. Help articles could do that. You can also potentially turn these help articles into full articles. Because Q&A often comes from longer articles. For example, I remember a cocktail recipe, for example, how much lemon juice goes in a margarita, and then these answers will often have the full recipe, but it will just say, like, I don't know, it's a third. Anyway, that's not the subject of this webinar. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's often featured from a much longer article. The Q&A is
right.
not.
Combine the two, you can have, for example, schema on your blog pages or your long article pages. If you are delivering that kind of answer or that kind of content, then doing both is really valuable, I think.
So first of all, having really good authors is great. Google really cares about authority. It's called the EAT update, where if these poker players have other social media profiles, make sure that it's linked from there. Ideally, there's a literal like, hello, I am the author and I am this, with like a link to all their social media. Like, make it very obvious to Google that this person is writing an article. That's first, because then you kind of bring that authority along. Also, make sure that the blog article, like the actual author on Webflow, is that they're added as an author name, stuff like that. This also goes back a little bit to the metadata. That's the basics. The second thing is there's two things. So if you don't know if the effort is worth it, so you got like basically some poker things, some poker content ideas, I would say write almost like give it your best shot, like research them. But the first thing is just get a bunch of articles out. So time box it, get them live. I think it's much better to get a bunch of articles out first and see if they get ranked. Even if they're quite low, let's see if they get indexed, stuff like that. That still means you have to put in some effort. You have to find images, you have to put some internal linking, some external linking, like and you can use ChatGPT. You can kind of create your own outline. Use some research, use some quotes, and then maybe a relevant YouTube video, and then ask ChatGPT to kind of make that a real article. You don't have to make it super long and wordy. Just see in Google Search Console if that gets indexed. Then once it gets indexed, then you can kind of go, shall I rewrite this to be like a skyscraper, like a number one piece of content? So, because you might have a shot at it, but it really depends on like how well, for example, especially with poker, some of the top domains will be very, very good domains. If your domain is not as good, for some keywords, you just won't rank. So then it's not worth the effort. It might be on page 17 or nothing. So that's the first thing I would look at, which is like, can you get ranked to like 10 or 20 keywords? Approach the kind of find out 10 or 20 or maybe even more keywords, and then just push content live, see if it gets indexed, if it gets picked up, where is it? And then check the first, ideally you've already checked if the first page of Google is not too competitive. If it isn't, then kind of make sure that your content is better in the first 2 or 3 articles. That's how I would approach it. So it's slightly more holistic. Think about multiple articles. Don't think about a single article. Really rely on the credibility of the author and do it iterative. So get some content live, check if it gets indexed, and then rewrite it if it's at the top.
A couple of things that I would add to that, Hans. Maybe sort of the before and after of your process. So do an audit on the site and make sure that everything is set up how it should be, so that Google's going to be okay with it, and that it will get indexed. And then have a little, you may have already done this, but have a think about the keywords that you're trying to target. So go and do some research and see how competitive are those keywords around the poker sites, because I can imagine, like Hans said, there's going to be some pretty competitive keywords, but there might be some opportunities for ranking on some less competitive keywords. And then having really authoritative authors can help you rank for those. Yeah.
This has been on top of our mind. Well, it was more before, because now we kind of cracked it. It's a bit less. But one funny thing is, if you're in front of your computer, type in Beethoven, the composer, on Google. The first image is AI generated. Google doesn't care if things are AI or not, because also we don't care. I don't know about you, but I use AI quite a lot. I ask it like, oh, I just wrote this email. Can you make it friendlier? And then it does that for me, which is quite useful. Stuff like that. Like, we use it. We're okay with it. A 100% AI generated article is low quality content. So the only time that ranks is if there's nothing else better on Google. In 2024, there probably is, so it won't rank. So that's the main thing you kind of have to look at it. Like, if no one has ever published an article on air conditioning repair, a ChatGPT article will rank number 1. The thing is, there's probably already a few articles out there, and the human written articles from a few years ago are probably worse than, a well-researched, decent outline, bunch of quotes, then generated, making sure it uses the tone of voice in the website. Like that, an actual human didn't write the final sentence is not really the issue. And doing that kind of content is actually still hard. It took us a while to crack this. And we still can't do it at insane numbers. We can't do it at 3,000 pages per hour, for example. That would be, there's just too much happening. Like, you have to run 10 scrapes. They have to come back. It takes time. So yeah, that's my main answer. Low quality content doesn't rank because there's already better content out there, not because it's AI generated or not. OpenAI had launched an AI checker. They removed it because it's really hard to check AI. And it's also quite futile. Like, Google doesn't seem to care. They've not cared about it in the last year. They kind of seem to be okay with it as long as the quality is good. If it gets traffic, basically.
I've also seen a tweet from one of the Google search folks saying the same thing, that they don't care that it's AI generated, they care that it's quality.
Yeah. Just like if you get an email from someone and it says, "Hello, in this ever-changing world, blah blah blah, let's delve into this." You don't want to read that, like some kind of ChatGPT email. But if someone has spell checked an email to you and it's by AI versus the email has a few huge spell checks, I'd say I appreciate the AI enhanced one more. So it's all about how you use it, really, really.
In the end, it doesn't, yeah, it's not about whether I wrote it or the computer wrote it for me. You can review it, you can edit it if you need to, you can make changes if you need to, but in the end, it's about having a piece of text that represents what you're trying to say.
I can answer this quick, and I think Tom, you could probably add a few more notes because you've also done this. So yes, if so, prompt engineering is kind of interesting because the best prompts are like super short prompts that are very intuitive. Uh, we've like some base prompts leaked, like the prompts that are on top of cheap ChatGPT, for example, and they're really like how humans talk, or they're not too complicated. So there's no easy hack. There's not like, oh yeah, you have to add this word to it and it will trigger it. The main thing that you wanted to do is break it down into chunks. So don't ask it to generate an article. Give it an already written article and ask it to fix the spelling or fix the grammar or add an example. Will not get it into this kind of generic tone. By the way, the generic tone is kind of how the internet talks. So it's trained on previous data. So if you don't give it enough data, it will go back to generic. So give it way more data. Write a really just write an article, and then have it also write an outline and add some notes, and then just ask it to write an introduction of this. Will probably give you a pretty good introduction, but if you just ask it to write the whole article in one go, it will go back to generic because it just doesn't have enough information. The other thing is if you haven't, so 4.0 is better than older ones. And cloud is quite good too. So you can also try, like, make sure you use the latest language models as well. They're slightly better. And don't over prompt. That's kind of the two things as well. Yeah, Tom,
Yeah, I'd say,
some stuff.
yeah. My only addition to that would be you could definitely come up with something that works well and meets your needs. I think the reason tools like Adaptify and FluidSEO exist is you can for sure do it yourself. But the workflow and having to copy and paste between here and there and spend the time every time the model changes to update your prompts and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I think there's some secret sauce in the things we're doing, and then there's a bunch of stuff that's not super secret sauce. And the reason tools like FluidSEO and Adaptify exist is to try and just make your life easier, basically, so you don't have to think so hard about it and spend as much time on it. But definitely you can get better results if you spend a bit more time thinking about the prompts and giving it the context around tone of voice, all that kind of stuff.